Hey, it worked. Hi guys, and welcome to another Follett House Friday here at the Follett House. I'm on a little bit of a different equipment than I was last week, so hopefully this doesn't go terribly wrong. But this week, as you saw on our Facebook page, we're going to be talking about a sword that belonged to an officer in the Civil War from Sandusky. His name was Foster V. Follett. Now, Foster V. Follett is related to Iran Follett. It is his grand nephew, technically. And what kind of brought my attention to this item was that the sword is actually personalized, which I think is really fascinating. I'm going to flip the camera here, and hopefully it will work. Hey, look at that. So if we come on this side of the sword, and I'm going to try and get an angle that it's readable, you'll see that the sword says Lieutenant F.V. Foster, 128th OVI, which stands for Ohio Volunteer Infantry, from his friends, Sandusky, Ohio, January 12th, 1864. So what's interesting about this is a couple things. The first, obviously, is this was a sword that was given to him by his friends. As we kind of look through the length of the sword, you can see it's very ornate, very nicely done. On the handle, you can see that it says USA. There's a decorative eagle on there. And if you guys will bear with me for 1 second, I will pull the blade out so you can actually look at that as well. And if you can kind of see, the blade is very intricately designed. You have E Pluribus Unum, which of course is from the seal of the United States. You know, it's very, very intricately done. So this probably, in all probabilities, would have been a uniform, something that he probably wouldn't have carried on duty. Probably something that would have been worn more for dress occasions. The date is interesting as well. I'm going to flip back for a minute. Let's see if I can get this back to where it was. So the date's interesting. So as you saw, it was an 1864 date, which happens to be a little during his commission. So he originally joined the Army in 1863. So it was a little bit after he was commissioned a lieutenant. For those of you from Sandusky, some of you might be familiar with the regiment, the 128th Ohio Volunteer Infantry. They were part of the regiment that guarded Johnson's Island and the prisoner of war camp out there. Company B, which was the company that he was a part of, was originally called Hoffman's Battalion, which once again, for those of you who are familiar with Sandusky history, may have heard of before. And they were formed specifically to guard Johnson's Island. When doing this research a little bit, I hit a snag, a confusion. So you saw there was a Foster V. Follett. When looking into the 128th Regiment, there was another Foster Follett, same regiment, same company, and he eventually became captain, though he died in 1862. So I was confused. I was trying to figure out if there was a misprint or something. And after going into the difference, into the details a little bit, I found that the other Foster Follett was Foster M. Follett, who is his father. Foster M. Follett was a large public figure in Sandusky. He was a mayor for several years at one point in time. He was the county auditor. What he's probably best known for was his name is on the monument at the cholera epidemic cemetery for helping people here in Sandusky during that outbreak. So it took me a little bit to figure out that the sword that we have is actually the sword of the son and not the father. what's really interesting, something else that we have in our collection that has to do with this Foster Follett, is a copy of a letter that was given to Foster Follett by some of the soldiers, well, captured soldiers, out at the Confederate prisoner of war camp. I'll read you, it's a very short letter. I'm going to just read it for you so we can talk about it. It says, Lieutenant, we, the undersigned Confederate States officers, prisoners of war, Block 12, Company 25, Johnson's Island, take pleasure in expressing our highest appreciation of the efficiency, generally bearing, and kindness of yourself in all your official and social relations towards us. We desire to express the hope that should the fortunes of war place you in a similar situation, you may receive the same kindness and generosity at the hands of your captors. This was signed by 105 officers. So that gives you an idea of how well he was liked. It's interesting that the letter was presented in February of 1865. Of course, that would have been before the war is over, while Follett was still serving. So there are some accounts that he really was worried about how some of the prisoners were treated. There was some idea that he would want to make sure they were fed better and things like that. But it does kind of show that he was well respected amongst the prisoners. This Foster Follett served until the end of the war, mustered out service in Camp Chase in 1865, and they returned to life here in Sandusky. But it's really, I think, I said the sword's really interesting because it has a dedication to it, and that's not something you always see, that this was presented to him by friends here in Sandusky. And of course, it's a very ornate sword, as you guys saw. And if you guys have any questions while we're going through this, let me know. I'm more than happy to answer them. Or if you're watching this after we went through the period of it being live, in the comments, make sure you put your questions. I'll be keeping an eye on to try and answer them. And if you guys have any ideas of what artifacts you'd like to see in any of these future videos, please let me know. I can go through and find things. I mean, we have hundreds and hundreds of artifacts that I can choose from, so I can pick things that I really find interesting. But we're doing this program for you guys. So I'd like to know what kind of artifacts or documents or things that are part of our historic collection that you would like us to talk about and follow through. Just kind of go back to I talked about the little bit of confusion I had when doing the research. It's kind of interesting. So I confused this Foster Follett with his father for a little bit. So Foster V. Follett then has a son who then he names Foster M. Follett, the same name as his father, which adds even more confusion to everything. And then he has a son also named Foster Follett. So it's, for those of you who do genealogy, you know this is very common. But as someone doing research, it's kind of crazy, and it's it makes for an interesting time, and it spent me a couple hours of head scratching trying to figure out what all went, who the heck sword I was looking at. All right, well, since I don't see any questions, I'm going to finish up the video. Thank you guys for watching, and like I said, if you have suggestions or ideas that you'd like to see in future videos, let us know in the comments. And if you have any questions, even though we're not live, I'll be more than happy always to answer them. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.